They hold a ceremony to wish Lugh well on his final trial that will name him as the official heir to their clan. But someone steps up to dispute the decision because he is far too young to be their next leader. Lugh's father decides to make the boys have a 1v1 to choose the next head, and Lugh instantly threatens to give him a bigger breathing hole. Rona says that it's dishonorable, but the Lord points out that they're assassins. So he attempts to fist RMC and gets an intimate moment with the floor, followed by a broken arm as his reward. Lugh's father gloats about how talented his son is, and everyone begins to cheer him on. But after the party, the two boys meets again, and Lugh offers him the chance to become the knight of his family when he becomes the head. Then takes out a sword to give him as a peace offering. So Rona says that after he returns from his test, he will be a much better knight to serve him. The next day, Lugh and Tart gets ready to go on the final test, then leaves their homes behind to learn the ways of a merchant. Our party arrives at the home of the merchant, where Lugh decides to change his hair color along with equipping Superman glasses to perfectly disguise himself. 2 years ago, we find Maha getting the attention of tourists so she can help them find what they're looking for in the town, and sends her friend to show him the way. She calls over more of the young women to lead the customers to their location, while the other girls reveals that the tourist often pays a fee for guiding them, and this is the only way that they can survive. It suddenly starts raining, so all the girls begin meeting up under a little home that they made together. Maha tells them that they'll have to buy better clothes to make the other girls join in on the business so they can make enough to buy a proper home. And although the other girls don't understand, they trust that listening to her will make their lives much better. A group of men abruptly confronts the young ladies and tries to kidnap them, but Maha uses tackle to take down 2 of them in an attempt to give everyone a chance to escape. She breaks their ankles and runs as fast as possible, but one by one all the girls begins getting abducted by the criminals until no one is left. They put their victims in a carriage and carry the young women to a recently made orphanage, where they're introduced to a fugly fat bastard. He tells them that from now on this will be their new home, but when they protest his decision, he feeds them a knuckle sandwich. The young ladies are led inside a room and realize that everyone was captured during the raid. They reveal that the men kidnapped them in order to collect money from the Lord for taking care of orphans, and their capturers gives them a bag of raw resources to feed them for a week, so they craft the consumables into food for dinner. The next day, their captors begin putting all the young ladies to work as their servants and hands out brutal punishments for any mistake they made. The facially deficient man comes in to introduce a noble visiting the town to his orphanage so he can take a look at all the young women doing their tasks. They go back to their rooms and start to prepare a meal until an abductor comes in to call over one of the girls along with Maha to accompany her. He tells the frightened lady to take off her clothes and pours water over her body so Maha can bathe her. In the night, they put her in a pretty dress and the Snorlax leads her outside, where they drive off in a carriage. But hours later Maha hears them return and she sees her friend walking alone. After she enters the room, Maha goes over but finds the young woman crying before she runs away. Maha follows behind to find her friend laying in the storage room and sees that she's traumatized by what just happened to her. The abductors sends the young woman to face these knights many more times, with Maha being powerless to help her. Until one day, while the ladies are working, the men calls over the regular girls for their routine, but the other girls comes to question what they're doing to their friends. So he allows them to find out exactly what she's been through for all these nights. One of the girls cries inside the storage room after a day of getting clapped in the streets and gets up while holding a hole maker. She begins having a mental breakdown and starts ruining her beautiful face until Maha manages to stop her from doing any more damage. But she reveals that at least now no one will hurt her anymore, and the 2 women begins crying together. In present time, Maha carries food to her capturers but overhears them saying that she's finally old enough to be put to work. The young woman is horrified by this and begins running away while remembering all the trauma the other girls faced after being used. She decides to friendly fire on herself to avoid that fate, but our MC comes over and tells her to stop crying and smile. He meets with the fugly bastards to take in one of the girls for his family, and he immediately walks over to the girl with mana for no particular reason. But the walking whale tells Lugh that he must wait 3 days before she'll be ready to go, and Maha realizes that he'll break her before that time comes. She takes a bath, then her friend gets her ready for the debut, but wonders if she didn't scar herself, would Lugh have chosen to save her instead. They begin their travel to the home of the client, and EDP reveals to Maha that after tonight she will serve him cupcakes for the next 2 days. She decides that his plans won't happen, then makes her escape into the forest, but an abductor blocks her path and restrains the poor girl with his arms. Lugh arrives in the forest to save the young lady from the men, but Porky runs over to see what's happening and decides to take out both of them to keep the duo silent. They attack RMC, but he easily takes out the two waste of life, but spares the villains to experience the hands of justice. At the home of the client, a woman arrives at his room, so he takes her to his bed and opens her heaven holders, but the door opens as the guards come in to charge the noble with human trafficking, while Tart makes her escape from the mansion. We go over to the orphanage, where all the girls are happy to show their friends that her scarred face has been perfectly healed, while Lugh stands on the outside to officially welcome Maha into his harem. At the merchant's home, Lugh does an operation to help his fake brother heal from his sickness, but warns him that no one should know who made him better. The merchant thanks him for helping his family and tells RMC that the adoption process has been completed, so Lugh recognizes Maha as his new younger sister within his fake family. The next day, the merchant gives Lugh control over a store that isn't making a profit to see if RMC can succeed where he failed. In the night, RMC thinks that he only has 5 more years to defeat the hero, but he hears a knock at the door and sees that his harem has come so they can sleep together. The two waifus supports Lugh and wishes him well on his store, while he compliments himself on finding pawns that he can control. In the morning, RMC sits in front of the merchant and his wife to reveal that he plans on selling moisturizer in his store, since this world hasn't discovered how to make it yet. The woman pours out the white fluid in her hand before giving herself a facial and begins praising Lugh for how good his product feels. The merchant's wife tells RMC that she hated him for being her husband's bastard, but after seeing what he created, she can accept him as her own son. And after hearing all this, the merchant wisely decides to put the full force of his organization behind Lugh's invention. 6 months later, the cosmetic store is officially open for business, and we find that all the noble women in the kingdom are coming to experience Lugh's product, while Maha, along with her friends, manages the business from inside. We go outside to see Lugh and Tart rejoicing from the success of their store, and they praise Maha for making it all possible. In the night, Lugh lays in his bed and realizes that a spy has broken in to extract the secrets of the moisturizer from him, but before he can act, Tart gives the intruder a brand new hole, while Maha comes down after restraining the poor bastard. They take their unwanted guest to the basement to kindly ask the man who hired him to spy on their master. Then the intruder experiences the 9 circles of hell until our waifus decides that he has suffered enough and gives him a one-way ticket on the Heaven Express. The next day, Lugh gets ready to go on his monthly trip away from this kingdom and says farewell to his beautiful bad bees. Our MC travels far away to meet up with his queen and carries many gifts to give her. The best girl shows him all the spells she's created, but one of them catches his eyes, so he writes it down to allow Gya to use anti-gravity magic. Lugh presents her with chocolate for the first time in her life, and she climaxes from the foodgasm in her mouth. Then the couple spends the rest of their day researching new application for the spells they've made with each other until night falls to bring their time together to an end. He tells her that he'll return next month, then goes back home to spend the rest of the night sleeping with his bad bees. Our assassin awakens to 2 angels looking down upon him and freaks out when he realizes that he had his first wet dream as a young man, but after the women sees what happened, they begin giving him the green light to clap their cheeks to his heart's content. 2 years later, we find Maha's friends walking home late from the cosmetic store, but 2 men suddenly starts attacking them and asks for all their money. The Dark Knight arrives to take out the evildoers and saves her friends, but the men get back up, so she turns the lucky bastards into her seat before threatening to give them a tour to hell. The next day, Lugh stands while waiting for Tart to return from her mission, and it's revealed that she has been fighting on a battlefield to gain combat experience. He explains that because he has become a successful merchant that's known throughout the kingdom, his test is now over and he can return home. Our MC transfers all the responsibilities of the business to Maha, but the waifu reveals that she plans to expand the business by buying a new store that belonged to a declining company. Lugh realizes that the store she has in mind belonged to her father, who was betrayed by his partner, so he could take over their family business, and he tells her to do as she pleases as long as there is a profit. Maha's friends suddenly walks into the room to give their savior a present to thank him for everything he's done and wishes him farewell on his travels. Lugh changes his hair back to badass white while Tart goes back into her waifu clothes and they prepare to leave this kingdom behind. He says goodbye to Maha, but the waifu reveals that she knew that the reason he saved her was because she had mana and he needed help to carry out missions. But while possessing this knowledge, she still appreciates everything that he has done for her and makes him promise to visit her once a month like he does with Dia. Our assassins begin their journey to return home, but along the way they encounter some good boys looking for a meal. They go outside and Tart decides to settle the beef she has with their species. She draws her segmented poker and gives the first volunteer an emergency brain surgery, but when the other comes from behind, our waifu gives it a few extra holes before throwing the spear to penetrate the last creature. Lugh praises her for her improvement, but he notices that because the monsters have traveled so far, the hero should show up soon. They return to the mansion where Lugh's mom starts embracing her son and rejoices from his scent near her body. She thanks Tart for looking after her little assassin for so long, but the waifu says that she enjoyed her trip with him. Lugh goes inside to have a meeting with his father where he tells him that he's become a man over the course of his 2 years away and congratulates him on the completion of the final trial. The Lord reveals that he made Lugh's merchant identity to give him a way out of the thankless job of being an assassin if the kingdom ever abandoned them, and asks him to choose between being a successful merchant that can live as he pleases or continue as an assassin that lives to cut away the infestations within the kingdom. Lugh tells his father that he wishes to remain with their family as an assassin because he wants the kingdom to remain safe so the happiness that is found can be protected. Our MC reminds himself that he will never be used as a tool again to be discarded after his usefulness have expired, and confesses to his father that he needs his noble status so he can make Dia his wife. In the night, Lugh takes on his first solo mission to put down a noble that's been selling the county's military secret for some white powder that he then distributes in his kingdom. Our MC starts off by investigating who is behind the plot and goes to send a message to the information gathering division that Maha is leading, but he also disguises himself to go and take a look at what's happening in person. Our assassins arrive at the city and goes inside to see many wounded soldiers who are forced to beg in order to survive. Our party walk into an alleyway where they find a girl selling jams to anyone who comes near her and offers them a sample for free. So Tart takes it and hands it over to Lugh, who decides to have a taste for himself. He realizes that it has some good shit inside and tosses it on the floor, but a group of men confronts our two assassins and they show why their hands are rated E for everyone by knocking them into sleep mode. They see the girl desperately trying to scrape the jam back together while saying that her mother needs it. The young lady takes them to her home where they see that her mother is suffering from addiction, so Lugh goes over to restrain the old lady and hits her with the healing hands to make her body no longer rely on the white. They return home to see that a package has arrived which contains information sent by Maha confirming that the Count is the leader of the operations, and Lugh decides that he must be taken out. The next day, Lugh travels with Maha while wearing his merchant disguise and they arrive inside the domain of the Count. His wife comes out to welcome our duo and Lugh tells her that he brought a brand new product for her. They go into the office where the woman begins rubbing the white fluid all over her face and Lugh tells her that he would like her to advertise his new line to everyone. The Count enters the room to thank them for visiting his city to make his wife happy and invites them to the party that he is keeping. Lugh proves that he has high stats in Riz and enjoys the event with Maha while they watch their target from afar. After many days have passed, Lugh decides that it's time to deliver the Count to the hands of the Lord. He takes out his pewter and goes down so he can give the bastard a taste of the American spirit, but he sees the wife grieving from the loss of her husband. At that moment, the assassin's heart grew 3 sizes larger, so Tart comes over to embrace him. And Lugh decides that he doesn't regret what he has done, but he will not forget that he took someone's loved one away. A few months later, we find Lugh and Tart coming back from their vacation on an uninhabited island, but they see Maha waiting for them at the shore. They arrive on land where she welcomes them back to the continent but tells them that she has bad news. Maha reports that she was able to find a divine treasure holding immense power, then began negotiating to acquire it. But a civil war suddenly started that involved Dia's family, and the soldier that's given them the most problem is the one in possession of the divine treasure, who also is a candidate to be the hero. The next day, Lugh goes over to visit the best girl and asks if she's alright, but Dia tells him that the battle is far away from her land so the rebellion won't harm her. Lugh reveals that the hero may be among the enemy and no one in this world has the power to stop him, so he would like to use his merchant connections to move her family to safety. Dia scolds him for thinking she would abandon her people and invites him on a date. The young couple begins exploring the city where Lugh teaches his twin flame how to aim so she can win a teddy bear. While returning from the store, they see a boy sitting by himself, so Lugh takes the bear to talk to him and finds out that he can't find his mom. Dia uses beast-breathing 7th form to hear his mother calling for him, then they reunite the family together again. The best girl takes him to a hot spring and they go inside the pool where she squirts on him, so he starts busting back. But during the water fight, Dia slips and Lugh is forced to save his queen, which puts them in a very suggestive position. The couple lays in the pool together while wishing that they could stay like that forever, but because they're nobles, the two have many responsibilities to their people and they end their date by attempting to eat each other's faces. Lugh returns Dia to her home and she reveals that this will be the last time they meet until the war is over. But after he leaves, our waifu reveals that all the random citizens were her soldiers in disguise, and she wishes Lugh goodbye while heading off to fight her battle. Lugh returns to his home and sees an injured man on the floor. His father asks him to take on a mission as a personal request, then explains that long ago Dia's family was involved in a rebellion where they were defeated, so the lord had to give up a large amount of his family's wealth. However, recently the other nobles have turned their attention to Dia because whoever possesses her will have powerful children. But to prevent his daughter from being taken, all their vassals along with the citizens armed themselves and are now engaged in a fight at the castle. Lugh's father reveals that his mission would be to sneak into the castle and fake Dia's passing while bringing her back to live with them in secret. Our MC wonders why his father would accept this mission since it holds no benefit for their kingdom, but he reminds himself that he is no longer a tool and must make his own decisions. Lugh decides to take on the mission because he's in love with Dia and promised to always go to her whenever she called. His father tells Lugh that he also made the same choice for the one he loved and reveals that his mother is from Dia's family and she is also his cousin. Lugh gets ready to go on his mission and Tart decides to help, but he says that it's too far for her to travel while keeping up with him. However, she explains that she'll guide him part ways in order to reserve his strength for battle. Tart summons a wind wall and they begin their journey to rescue their friend, and Lugh reveals that Tart is using a shield to block all the wind resistance while pulling him along through a slipstream. But while drafting makes his journey easier, it takes a huge toll on the one leading the way. Tart thinks that she was always thankful for everything Lugh did for her, even though she knew that he only wanted a tool. And because of this, our waifu decides that she'll be her master's ultimate weapon to make all his dreams come true. Tart tries her best to push herself, but she soon reaches her limit and is blown away by the force of the wind. The waifu cries and apologizes since this is the furthest she can take him, but Lugh thanks her for allowing him to conserve his strength. Then Tart makes him promise to return with the one he loves, and he leaves our favorite maid behind while she begins grieving from the fact that Lugh's heart will never belong to her. Our MC arrives at the castle and realizes that although Dia's army is at a massive disadvantage, they are somehow managing to keep the enemy back. Lugh goes into the forest to find a spot with a clear view of the battlefield so he can begin camping like a Warzone player. He uses American magic to aim down the soldiers with mana and begins granting them freedom from their mortal vessels, but the army reacts immediately to launch a counterattack. Lugh realizes that they're familiar with Puers and deduces that the best girl has also been showing them the American spirit to hold them off. He finds another location and summons his bowcheck to craft an arrow containing a mana stone and takes aim at the army below to send many of the unfortunate soldiers on the Heaven Express. But seeing the confusion taking place outside, Dia's soldiers rushes into battle to slay all the enemies. Lugh runs through the battlefield where he finds a loot box and decides to take it with him. He sneaks into the castle while avoiding all the soldiers to make it to his queen. They embrace each other and she thanks him for coming to her, but her father comes over to introduce himself. Lugh tells him he's come to complete his request, and her father says that after she's gone he will make an escape with his army, then launch a counterattack to take back their kingdom. Our assassin decides to fake Dia's passing by setting the building on fire and takes out the loot box he carried to place as her body. He tells the best girl to open the window to scream, however he suddenly feels a sense of overwhelming danger flood into his body. A knight throws the divine weapon towards them, forcing Lugh to launch a projectile that explodes on impact, but it continues forward to destroy the room they're in. The weapon flies back to its owner and Lugh notices that he's overflowing with powerful mana, so he summons the Big Daddy Pure to give the poor bastard an up-close fireworks show. But the man survives the dramatic finish and rejoices that he has finally found a worthy opponent. Lugh realizes that the man has the berserk skill that gives him increased stats as his rage rises, and Dia's father reveals that this man was the one who defeated the royal family in the last rebellion. He challenges Lugh to face him in a 1v1 duel with the condition that the winner stays while the loser retreats. Seeing no other option, our MC accepts the fight, but the best girl protests it because he'll lose. Lugh summons a big black rod and tells her that he will assassinate the knight before sending his weapon away. Our party begins walking towards the strongest enemy they ever faced, and Lugh begins stalling his opponent in every way he can think of. Our MC sends back Dia's father while the goddess watches her favorite show, and the combatants decides that the duel will begin when a coin hits the ground. Lugh tosses the silver in the air, but when it reaches the floor, a nuclear explosion drops on his opponent. He explains that long before he passed away, the United States was developing a weapon called the Rods from God, but its issue was that the material would burn up too quickly. However, in this world he conquered this problem by using the anti-gravity spell Dia developed to send the object into orbit. Then he applied the wind magic tart used to stop it from burning up, but aiming was an issue, so he trained for weeks on an island to master the skill. And he combined everything he learned to bring down the full force of freedom to erase the night from existence. Lugh awakens to find the best girl by his side and shows his cousin some Alabama love before they return to the mansion with each other. While Dia's father goes into hiding for the time being, and Maha gets a note explaining everything that happened, then rejoices from the good news she received.
Like for a cat girl, subscribe for a waifu, and remember to stay swifty.